Yeah, likewise. All right, thank you very much.
Well, and working with him at the university is great.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah, he's doing a great job. He's there at a really good time.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to get started with the next portion of our program. We're very, very happy to have with us Commissioner Koski. But before we have him come up and offer his remarks, Congressman Filimon Vela, the co-chair of the Congressional Border Caucus, who's already been a part of our panel this morning and has been talking to us about the importance of border issues, will actually introduce and present to you all Commissioner Koski. Thanks very much, Congressman.
First of all, let me begin by thanking Ambassador Medina for being here with us again. Thank you for being here today, and thanks for all your assistance over the last year and a half. And we look forward to continuing to work with you and to make things better for all of us in both countries. So my job right now is to introduce Commissioner Koski. And I'll begin by telling you a little story. We all know that we've got some immediate challenges that those of us who work in Congress are working on, and the folks at Homeland Security and HHS with the unaccompanied minors. Last Wednesday, I was in Brownsville, and I had an energy forum. And what we were doing was trying to educate the public about the potential impact of the Mexican energy reforms, the future of LNG facilities, and what's going on in the Eagle Ford Shale in the northern part of my district and how that could impact our region. I chose the municipal bus station to have the forum because it's brand new and they've got a great conference center. So we had that forum on the second floor, and of course there was lots of folks there and lots of media. And when it was all done and we had finished our discussion about energy reform, a TV reporter came up to me. And he said, "Sir, what do you think about this?" I said, "What do you think? What do I think about what?" So he opened the curtain because we were on the second floor. He says, "Well, what do you think about that out there?" And I looked out, and sure enough, there was about 75, about 50 unaccompanied minors and about 20 adults that had been dropped off by the Homeland Security Homeland Security buses so that they could be transported to the new facilities that Homeland Security is established to help house these folks that really need our help. So the following day on Monday I flew up to Washington, to D.C., and I was with our airport director. And in the city of Brownsville Airport, there are about 8 planes, Homeland Security planes, every day, leaving and transporting undocumented minors and other women and children. And so we've got a real difficult situation on our hands. I say all that because I want to express my gratitude to you, Commissioner, and to Secretary Johnson, whom I had the privilege of meeting with just 2 days ago. He's got such a difficult job before him, and I think to the extent that this situation was laid at his lap, he's doing everything he can to solve this situation. And I have to just say that what I really believe is for the past few years, as I've watched and listened to what we do with our State Department, I know how important issues in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and Asia are, but these Central American countries are right in our backyard. And I think it's very important that our State Department develop an aggressive and robust approach, because at the root cause of that situation lies in what's going on in those countries, and we have an obligation to make those places safe and economically stable. But in saying that, I introduce to you Commissioner Koski. He was the chief of police in Seattle for 10 years, I believe, and most recently ran the Office of National Drug Control Policy for the United States. And about 2 months ago, he was appointed by President Obama to be the nation's Commissioner for Border Patrol and Border Protection. So, Commissioner Kurlikowski, thank you for being here. They're calling votes, so I'm going to go to the Capitol, and I will be back later. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you. Well, good morning, everybody. It's a delight to be with you. It's a delight to be back at the Wilson Center. I can't thank the Congressman enough for all that he has done. I certainly, Ambassador, it's wonderful to see you, and we've had a tremendous relationship. And, you know, we entitled this Envisioning a Competitive U.S.-Mexico Border, which I think is critical. And when the Congressman spoke about this issue of unaccompanied children, this actual discussion about the economic issues, and not just certainly with Mexico, but the Central American countries is absolutely critical. Because if these things improve economically, safety and security is also usually a part of that, and perhaps this more holistic approach would also offer some relief to as the Secretary and others, including myself, have said, this humanitarian crisis that is unfolding right now on the border. You know, 6 months ago when I had the other job on drug issues, the Wilson Center invited me. So it was great to be here and to have all the slings and arrows of the controversial drug policy issues, legalization, et cetera. So, you know, I'm much happier to be here about something as non-controversial as the border and et cetera. So thanks a lot. Thank you very much. And former Congressman Reyes is here, a good friend and a longtime public servant, and many others. So I'm delighted to be here. And in that earlier job at the Office of National Drug Control Policy, we actually wrote a strategy every 2 years by law called the Counter-Narcotics Southwest Border Strategy that had to be updated. So even though I'm new to this position, I had a number of meetings, a number of visits, a number of working relationships that were established over the 5 years that I served the President as his drug policy advisor, working on these issues. Well, it's been 20 years since the agreement was signed to reduce trade costs and increase business investment, and to help North America become more competitive in the global marketplace. I think 20 years later, we have some good numbers to tell. Since NAFTA was implemented, and the trade in the hemisphere has more than tripled. It's now worth more than $1 trillion annually. United States exports to Mexico and Canada have grown nearly 160%, and while Mexico's exports to the United States and Canada have grown approximately 400% and 200% respectively. Well, the United States Customs and Border Protection plays a huge, important, critical role in keeping our economies flowing. And it's this dual mission that the Secretary Johnson often talks about, and that certainly is a responsibility for me. And it's the protection of the borders, but it's also the facilitation of lawful trade and lawful travel. And they are not, by the way, mutually exclusive or even mutually competing. They're mutually reinforcing. In 2013, CBP cleared $1.6 trillion in exports and $2.4 trillion in imports. And of that, an average of $768 million of cargo and commodities crossed into the United States from Mexico each day. And that's why it's important for me to be here today, because you are the people driving those numbers. And it is a good time to be here. And of course, I wouldn't be a good federal employee if I didn't have lots of other statistics and data. But I'll try not to use that too much. Well, you've worked hard. You've worked very hard to bring about this 21st century international trade environment. And so much of what has been envisioned to transform these systems and processes is really moving forward. And right now, I have to tell you, it's moving forward at light speed. It's making trade safer, faster, cheaper, and more transparent. And that global supply chain is changing, and we need to maintain strong partnerships with industry to develop policies and programs that reflect these new realities. And that's why here in the audience we have a number of people from CBP that have been so active and so engaged in this. Several of them, one in particular, lives and breathes trade policy and can't get enough of it. Maria Luisa Boyce, that many of you have dealt with. So I couldn't be more appreciative, and frankly, I couldn't be luckier. Not only to be at CBP and to be honored with a nomination and a confirmation, the first confirmed commissioner in 5 years, in fact, but also to have the staff that we have at CBP that are so committed to making sure that we not only uphold the importance of safety and security, but we uphold the importance of the security of the United States economy. And that's really through these global partnerships. As a police chief in Buffalo and Seattle, I came to understand and recognize, because some of you may say, well, you know, you only have a real law enforcement background. But if you're the police chief of any major city, whether it's Washington, D.C. or Seattle, you really have to understand that you have to be a good partner with business and you have to be a good partner with trade. And those of you that have been fortunate enough to visit and spend some time in Seattle know that the international port is right in the heart of the city. So making sure as a chief of police that we were keeping a safe and secure city was important to commerce, but making sure that we had those trusted relationships was also critically important. After 9/11, the number of barriers that had existed between state and local law enforcement and federal law enforcement over information sharing, after 9/11, many of those barriers evaporated. And everyone, from an officer on the beat in the city of Seattle to an FBI agent to many others, all recognize the importance of security and safety. And when you really think about why so many people want to come to this country, as I've traveled, and I've been on a lot of airplanes. That's why I'm keeping the water handy here. I've been on a lot of airplanes lately, all over the world. And when you really think about why people want to come to this country, it's for so many of the things that we offer. When you think about that ability to do trade and to grow your business, and to grow your business in an environment that's not only safe, that is not only secure, but to grow your business in an environment in which corruption and payoffs are extremely limited, particularly to some other parts of the world. These things are all very important. Well, we need not only to facilitate these trade issues, but we also need to facilitate the importance of recognizing the issues around transnational organized crime. All of this has, as many of you know from lots of research, all of this has a very negative effect on people trying to do business. You know, I built on my experience as a police chief to work as the President's drug policy advisor and to change the focus of this nation's drug policy. And thanks to his support and thanks to the support of a lot of people, certainly in Congress, we did that. And we have. If you look at the front page, the front cover story of Governing Magazine, and talking about a pill nation, it not just talks about the law enforcement response, it talks about the response of other parts of government, the healthcare system, the criminal justice system, and many others, working together, not in silos, but working together to cut across those things. Well, that's very much the same way that I see CBP. As many of you know, we enforce federal laws for a variety of federal agencies. Many of those agencies, of course, don't have anywhere near the resources, the 62,000 people that CBP has. And so we have to be a good partner with those other federal agencies, whether it's FDA or the Consumer Product Safety Commission or others, in order to facilitate that trade, in order to make those decisions about what is safe and secure, but also how can we move these things faster and how can we help you get them to market, or how can we help you export them. Well, CBP's vision for the future, I think, has become more and more and more clear. And as I've heard from people all over the world, they could not be more pleased or more delighted with the direction that CBP has gone in understanding the relationship with the private sector, in listening to the private sector, informing, and thanks to many people here, in fact, in this audience, informing advisory committees that really give us the insight about what you need. We couldn't be more pleased about getting 2,000 additional CBPOs. Those Customs and Border Protection officers are absolutely critical. And when you talk about wait times at airports, when you talk about getting cargo through more expeditiously, we have a very good study, a very good piece of research that has kind of passed all the optical tests. And that research tells us how many additional people we needed. But more importantly, that research validates how important it is to the nation's economy that when we reduce these wait times, whether for travel or whether for cargo, that we can make a huge difference in expanding the nation's economy. Those things are particularly important. Congress, obviously, and the administration saw that study to be very helpful, and that's why we've received the funding for those folks. When you take a look today at the Wall Street Journal article on the wait times that have gone down, part of it is not only the additional people that have been added and will continue to be added, but it's also the use of technology. I think that all of those things are particularly important. We looked very hard, by the way, at where those people would be assigned, and the research study did say that we would need more than the 2,000. The 2,000, as many of you know, is through appropriated funds. The additional request from the President for, I think, about 1,800 personnel would be through increasing some user fees, some of which have not been increased in over a decade. And I think user fees is probably a bit of a controversial topic I'm surprised, with a few people. Let me tell you about the Centers of Excellence and Expertise. These are an amazing group of 10 different virtual programs within CBP. Frustrating part that has been heard and acted upon, not by me, I certainly don't take credit for this, but by many others in CBP, was to look at when things come into the 330 plus ports of entry. Sometimes, surprisingly, shockingly, you'd get a different answer about an import and how it should be, what tariff should be assigned, and on and on. Some of this is incredibly technical, unbelievably technical, and complex, and it takes real subject matter experts. So these centers of excellence, whether it's for airframe and automotive work, whether it's for electronics, whether it's for base metals, etc. They virtually connect these subject matter experts. They can take a look at the data and the information, and then they can send it, and then they can make a decision. And that decision will span the scope of all of those different ports of entry. So you wouldn't be getting different examples. So I've watched the scientists try to explain to me. Because if I'd done well in science, I wouldn't have become a police chief. So, but I've watched the scientists explain to me about base metals. But I've also seen this, this incredible level of knowledge that they have, especially when I got to open up a box in Miami of Michael Kors counterfeit purses. And probably not a lot of people could be harmed by a counterfeit purse. But think about the other counterfeit things that that we've come across and where we need that expertise, such as computer chips and brake pads and airbags and other things. Although I have to tell you, the one that's been most fascinating for me was when the expert on women's shoes was explaining women's shoes and how to detect the counterfeit, the counterfeit shoes. So now I've spent all this time, like I was looking in my wife's closet the other day, and she looked at me somewhat quizzically. And anyhow, that's a story for later. For later, but it is interesting. ACE in the single window, and frankly, although it took 8 months for my confirmation, and I don't think I was particularly controversial, I put the 8 months of waiting time to good work. And I had a lot of people spend a lot of time educating me about things. And certainly having one data system, one electronic data system that we can all interact with and use would save not only time, it would save money, it would make the trade facilitation, it would make life simpler, quite frankly. And this has been a big project, and I am watching it very, very carefully. And our CIO very much knows that I'm watching it very carefully. We have a huge responsibility in CBP to bring ACE in the single window to fruition, to move it on time. I think we know something about big computer projects run by the government lately. I think there have been a few of those. This is a huge one, and it's important. But I think we're being, the people that are rolling it out piecemeal and testing it as it goes along and implementing it as it goes along are doing a very good job. And I think that it will make a big difference. And part of the role that I had as the President's Drug Policy Advisor was to work very closely with the interagency and to bring them to the table and to work with them on President Obama's drug strategy, even though the money was in their budgets and authority and responsibility was often in their turf area too. But bringing them together so that we could collectively agree on goals, and then we could look at the measure the outcomes of those. And I see my role at CBP very much like that. So whether it's, like I said, the FDA, and having worked with Dr. Hamburg, who I'm a huge admirer of, or the Consumer Product Safety Commission, or Secretary Vilsack and the USDA issues. Those are all very important, that we can work together, that we can agree on issues. And then, because we have a lot of resources and we have a lot of expertise, perhaps there are additional things that we can and should be doing to make those release authorities come a little bit quicker. We recently announced in Miami, I think about a week and a half ago, a new relationship with the FDA and the industry. So it's kind of this three-part system with them in order to do a much better job of facilitating that. Our international partnerships, and Mr. Stallworth is here, and many of you have known him over a number of years as he's been at the helm of our international partnerships, and as he travels around the world to work on these things, are absolutely critical. So I've been kind of concentrating a little bit with him as he informed me and educated me and made sure that I recognized the critical importance. So we have lots of agreements and lots of MOUs. But most importantly, it's also about relationships with our foreign partners. And he's an individual that has established a number of relationships with directors general of customs and others around the world. And his help in introducing me to them and helping me to explain to them our important role is critical. And I could not have heard more during my confirmation process about trade and travel than how important it was that some of the successes and some of the work and some of the things that have been accomplished by CBP, that we also engage the 165 partner nations of the World Customs Organization in helping them. And I learned this a lot through our drug policy work, particularly in Mexico, where it was so important that we not only have the face of America being a partner on enforcement issues and information sharing, we fund 85% of the world's drug treatment research, fund or conduct. I mean, we have a huge amount of knowledge on what works when it comes to prevention, on what works when it comes to drug treatment. And we needed to be as aggressive in selling that And I mean not selling, actually giving it away. We needed to be as aggressive in giving that information away and those kinds of programs as we were often seen in the press as giving away helicopters or information sharing or making arrests. Because it's only through this holistic approach that we can make a real difference in the health of people, not only in the United States, but people's health throughout the world on drugs. But it's only through this holistic approach that we're going to actually make the difference, too, when it comes to trade and facilitation. Who are our constituents? I'll mention a couple things in particular. I know you're going to hear later from our colleague Jose Martin Garcia of SAT later this afternoon, that Canada is, and because Mexico has a single window, because Canada is developing its single window, we're kind of all in this together. I want to mention cargo pre-inspection with Canada because I think that's a success, and I think it's a success that can be, or a lesson learned that can go to other places. And that pre-inspection means that that miles north of our northern border, things are checked, analyzed, and flow into the United States, not causing the backup at the border. And I think the pre-inspection issues in Seattle, the Vancouver, British Columbia is particularly helpful. We recently opened this in Buffalo also. And many of you worked very hard on that pilot. We need to expand those kinds of ideas to other places. And with these pilots, we're testing the waters to see if we can operate on Canadian soil in other ways that would facilitate these things. 21st Century Border Management Initiative is critically important. When I was in Mexico City in April, I participated in the roundtable discussion with Mexico's head of customs and industry leaders. Those industry leaders that they brought together represented about 95% of Mexico's exports. The Beyond the Border Action Plan with Canada, we've had rigorous bilateral coordination with Mexico on beyond the border issues. In 2010, the United States and Mexico issued a joint declaration on 21st century border management, and we're continuing to have those discussions. Infrastructure is unbelievably important. We've seen so many increases. Excuse me. We've seen so many increases in travel, so many increases in cargo, and yet many of our ports, many of our airports aren't designed to handle expeditiously that because of the infrastructure problems. We have over 1,900 miles of land border with Mexico. One of the largest infrastructure projects is the modernization and expansion of the San Ysidro-Tijuana crossing, the world's busiest crossing, and I was there just a couple weeks ago. At Nogales, the Mariposa port of entry, more than half of the Mexican winter produce enters the United States. And there have been 4 new lanes that have doubled. So these increases in expansion of this infrastructure is a huge help to reducing wait times, to getting things in more quickly, but they're also an incredible help when it comes to safety and security. Another key focus pertains to our law enforcement and border security issues. Law enforcement cooperation is unbelievably important. We need to share information. We need to have trusted relationships. Expanding communications, which we've signed a number of agreements just recently with authorities and the government of Mexico, so that we can talk to each other, so that we can communicate, so that when we're right across the border from each other, we're able to have that communication. That has not always happened. That level of cooperation, that level of trust, that level of communication will make a huge difference to improving security on both sides of the border. The relationships that have been unprecedented in collaboration that I've seen. We've had very frank and fruitful discussions on a number of these challenging issues. I could not be more indebted to Ambassador Medina Mora. Knowing him in his role as the Attorney General, and then of course as an ambassador in England, and then I think we're all very fortunate in this country to have him in his current role. And the current Attorney General, the border violence issues, which many of you read about, are very important. They need to be addressed. We need, as an organization at CBP, to be much more transparent about what we do. So our regular engagement with leadership in Mexico is going to allow us to tackle these issues in a way that builds trust. Our Trusted Trader and Traveler programs, Mexico's Trusted Trader program, NEC, is an authorized economic operator. It's sanctioned by WCO. We're optimistic about signing a mutual recognition arrangement between our CTPAT and NEC. I could do a few more acronyms if just so you know. In 2030, we have more acronyms in CBP than the Department of Defense. In 2013, Mexico implemented their Trusted Traveler program, which speeds processing for previously authorized travelers at Mexican airports. Our program, in conjunction, this program in conjunction with our Sentry and our Global Entry Trusted Traveler programs are very important. Many of you know that Global Entry has hit over 1 million participants. All of this allows law enforcement to look at threats and concerns from a risk-based approach rather than an approach that, regardless of the amount of resources, we could not do an adequate job. So intelligence, information, risk assessment, technology, all of these things are important game changers in making sure that we also fulfill our very first and primary mission at CBP, which is a protective mission. And additionally, we've been working on projects that focus on wait time measurements, border master planning efforts, the Ready Lane installations. We're continuing to work with Mexico on developing new initiatives in light of the recent high-level dialogue that took place among the at the North American Leaders Summit in Mexico in February with President Obama, President Peña, and Canadian Prime Minister Harper. They all recognize the importance of this, and they have placed a great deal of responsibility on the part of Secretary Johnson, on my part, on our USTR, and others to make sure that we do everything we can to live up to that. You're going to hear more later on this afternoon. I believe Mr. Stallworth is on a panel. He will wow you with his knowledge and his long years of experience. In this area. I can't thank you enough for you letting me join all of you this morning. We're going to remain economically competitive. We're going to remain safe. There's no single government agency that can do any of this, and it requires a real collaborative approach, not just among government agencies, but certainly with you. So thank you all very much. You have my commitment. I'll do my very best to fulfill all the promises I've made. Thank you all.
We have time to take just 2 questions from the audience. We'll take them together and have one response from the Commissioner. And we know he has a busy day, so it will be difficult. But we'll start right here up front with Ambassador Medina Mora. It's on the way.
Commissioner, it's such a privilege to have the opportunity to work with you again. And I say so because you have shown us that actually when you understand something and then you map the way through and then you commit yourself, you get things done. And in the border, of course, we have a tremendous challenge and tremendous opportunities. This is what President Obama and President Peña Nieto and Prime Minister Harper addressed in the Toluca meeting. And of course, we talk too much or a lot about long-hanging fruit, which gives us the impression that this is easy to accomplish, and it's not. It is actually very much there in terms of it is obvious. We have gone a long way in terms of mapping what is needed to be done in order to make things happen. But then you need action, commitment, coordination, resources, staffing. And when you have to deal with all these issues, it gets complicated. But I'm sure that it has been proven with our previous work together, that we actually focus and commit and pick the areas in which we can really advance, you cannot solve the infrastructure and the staffing of 52 points of entry at the same time. But the objective to build up a North American competitive area, and I think that we have everything to become the most competitive area in the world, is really to take transaction costs down and to remove barriers of entrance. And for doing this, we need to, of course, focus on volume, focus on critical mass in order to really make this possible. So as I told you on the phone and you just told me, I congratulate myself and you told me that you do as well, to have the opportunity to work on these issues with such a fantastic team on your side, on our side. Aduanas and SAT, together with CBP, have done already a great job in terms of mapping the 21st century initiative and program, and what the Wilson Center has identified as well. I think that if we commit ourselves, we can really make a difference. And you can count on me, you can count on us. Thank you. It was a comment.
Thank you,
not-
Ambassador.
Thank you very much. We have one question in the back. If you could identify yourself, please.
Yes, Commissionerkoski, good to see you again.
Yes.
Ruben Barrera with the Mexican News Agency. The humanitarian crisis of these unaccompanied minors being detained at the border have another wrinkle add yesterday after the American Civil Liberty Union filed a complaint before the Office of Criminal Justice of the DHS, claiming systematic abuse of these minors by Border Patrol agents in some detention centers in Texas. A couple of days ago, you fired the head of the internal affairs of the CBP because I think there was a report that showed that all the claims about excessive use of force, unnecessary use of lethal force by Border Patrol agents that had resulted in more than 20 deaths had not been properly investigated. So the question that I have for you is, first of all, if you're planning to launch an internal investigation regarding this claim filed yesterday, and also, other than firing this guy, what other actions are you planning to do in order to dispel this notion that Border Patrol ignore these type of claims?
I think there are a couple things that I'd like to mention. One is that in less than 2 months on the job, I worked very hard to release some reports, to change the use of force policy, et cetera. And I think it's important that we all in this room recognize my commitment to being more open, more transparent on this. And I think I've started demonstrating that. Next Monday, FBI Director Jim Comey is assigning a person from the FBI's highest levels to come in and head internal affairs. That set aside, I would tell you that the complaints which I have not read will certainly be investigated. So let me make that commitment first. But I have to tell you, and I actually, having had a canceled flight and not much sleep, I'm a little, I'll probably say a little bit more than I probably should. I'm a little disappointed at the complaints. I've been down there a lot. I went down probably the second week I was in office to spend time. I changed travel plans just a few weeks ago to go back to McAllen. I've spent a lot of time there. It is a heartbreaking situation. I have never seen more humanitarian effort than from the men and women of the Border Patrol. They have brought in their clothing from their own kids. They are making formula. They were heating burritos in microwaves until additional help arrived. And by the way, things are better. A lot of help has arrived. But I would tell you that I'm very disappointed in that. They are taking on a Herculean task to take care of these kids. They're doing the best they can. and we should recognize that.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thanks so much for your remarks today. We're going to move straight into the next panel.
Thanks. Good to see you. Take care.
Where do you want me? I think we're here again. We're here. Am I moderator? Yeah. So we can hand him out to you and bring it. ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? How are you? How's life? Todo bien? We're missing you in Mexico. I miss Mexico, but I'm there a lot. Not now, then. Big issue. I know. So what do you think? Secondary legislation?